Hey guys. Feel like I just talked to most of you. Are we?
Yeah, let's just get right down to business.
I've got 19 players that I'd be happy to take right there.
This is your local day today. How did that go? How many prospects did you bring in from around the area?
I can't remember how many we had. It was good. I love that day. We had a good group, good overall group. I don't typically want to talk about any individuals, but we had a good group. It was competitive. I can foresee us having a few of those guys on our team next after the draft.
Speaking of groups, when you look at some of like the star powered like defensive lines, for example, like Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Georgia, guys that, or I should say lines that have multiple players that are going to get drafted at various parts. Is this sometimes hard to evaluate, like the individual as opposed to the group, because they might be playing next to superstar players that make them seem a little bit better? How do you kind of parse out from superstar secondaries or lines how the individual talent?
I think that goes just back to just evaluating your skills as an evaluator. Our scouts, my staff, you single out the player and you watch the player. I guess they're playing more in waves now and they're playing more sporadically than they did in the past. But you're still watching the player and evaluating when he's in there. It's a little bit tougher now. A lot of these players at multiple positions are playing less and less because the colleges don't want to make sure they keep the young guys there in the pipeline without entering the portal. So we talk to a lot of these seniors that are coming out, and they have to be a team player, and they have to allow the freshmen and sophomores play more, even though they may be better, just so the team can keep the player. So you see a lot more platooning now than you ever have.
In that vein, like what is it when you're looking at a player, say, I don't want to names, but a guy who transferred, right, his final year, and you look at the production he had to the new team he went to versus the production he had with the team he was before. How do you kind of weigh that out as far as the evaluation process to where he didn't look good this year, but he looked great last year?
I'm still going back to watching the tape and what he does when he's in there, not evaluating the numbers of the production that he had. It's what he did when he was in there.
On that point where upperclassmen aren't getting as many stacks, I don't know if it messes up your evaluation, but does that mess up potentially drafting a guy because he's going to probably need more development?
I don't know. It's a case-by-case basis. They're still getting a lot of reps in practice, that we don't necessarily see. But you have to just go by what you see on the tape. There could be cases of that. Haven't come across that yet. Luckily, we've been drafting pretty well here. But it's could be.
Jason, you said at the when we talked to you at the owners' meetings, you were saying that anything is possible. You wouldn't be opposed to if somebody gave you a good offer to trading down and getting more picks. Is that the case in your mind more this year? Be willing to trade down than in previous years with that first pick, maybe?
I don't know about more. There have been years where I've thought about it more than others. It just kind of depends on how things fall. You can't walk into and say, I am definitely looking to trade back, because you don't know what's going to fall to you. So I do think this year is going to be, I could be wrong, you're going to see maybe a little less people wanting to move up and offering enough to make it worth your while, just because I think the draft is pretty leveled out at a certain point. So you might be able to get the same player in the second round, same level of player as you can in the fourth round. So at certain positions. So I think you'll maybe see a little bit less of that.
How much of that has to do with this team's success at drafting guys that aren't necessarily in the first round, but like the second and third rounds, like the Chris Godwins or even recently Jalen McMillan? I mean, I know every second and third round pick you have isn't always a home run. Yaya Diaby's been great, but I mean, the inclination to potentially trade back, how much does that have to do with the fact that, you've been able to develop guys really well that aren't first rounders?
It might have something to do with it, but I think it's just the way this draft is. You know, we've had some good production. My staff and the coaches have done a great job. Last 3 years, I would say the combined those drafts were elite. So when you add them up together, so we keep doing it. It doesn't always work out that way, but keep doing it. But I think this particular draft just seems to be a little bit more leveled out, which I'm excited about. I'm not saying that that's something I don't like about this draft. It's something I do like about the draft.
I heard someone say this is a starter draft, which, you know, there's not a lot of blue chip. Probably ends around 15, 12 is the true first round grades. But you can get a lot of starters throughout the draft, through the middle of the first to even early in the third round, where you can come away with a couple guys to be started. Is that a fair assessment, would you say?
Yeah. If you get a little lucky, but I'd say it goes beyond the third round. So, yeah, I mean, if we do everything right.
Jason, can you talk about your receiver position? You've obviously got some legacy type players, the best 2 receivers ever in this franchise. You drafted both of them. But they're getting up there in age. There's no secret about that. Jalen hit it out of the park last year, but just the need to constantly try to provide depth at that position. I think Todd told us, he goes, I'm not going to look past a good player no matter what it is, including receiver, if he's the best player.
Yeah, we could always use receivers. I think Todd even said you got to score points to win. So, we're fortunate to have those 2, and who knows how long they'll play. Could be longer than what people are saying. So, and then, kudos to our offense. Our coaches last year for getting production out of, Sterling Shepard and Jalen, like you said, and, Ryan Miller and these guys. So, but we always want to try to keep that group fresh and, look for the next, JMac. So, yeah, we're not going to overlook that position at all if everything falls that way for us.
Did you know last year when the draft was over, everybody thinks, hey, we had a really good draft, right? Graham, you go down the line, there's Bucky, but I mean, even by your own standards, we'll look back on that, I think, and say that was really a special group. Do you have a feeling when you're drafting them? Did you know what Bucky was going to do? You hope he will. But like, at what point do you go, man, we got some really good players?
Well, I'll say this: if I would have known what Bucky was capable of, I probably would have taken him in the second round or first round. We knew that we had a special group of guys, that the individuals, but you still never know until you get out there and they start playing. So to say that we knew that it was going to be what it was, no. But just like the 2 drafts previous to that, we came out and given high fives saying we've got great guys, if anything. So that work hard, that are team guys, all those things. So you knew you had a chance. And we thought at the time they were good players, but you still never know until you actually get out there. You feel confident about it, but you never know.
There's a lot of hybrid players. Seems to be more and more every year. Guys that, they've had production off the edge, but then they can also line up, as an inside linebacker. How do you kind of balance that when, and like you had said, they may not have the numbers because, again, they're not lining up, they're not going to have the sack numbers per se because they're not lining up on the edge the whole time. How do you kind of balance that with, okay, we think this guy is a full-time this, but the tape that we're evaluating doesn't necessarily show a ton of snaps there?
It just takes a lot of discussion with Todd of what his vision is, with each player, because we don't want to just take a player and say, hey, we think that he can do this, and so we just assume you're going to do that with him. So it takes a lot of discussion, which we do have, and we have a lot of great discussions about that. So at the end of the day, we have to all feel comfortable that if we get this player, this is what we hope he can do.
And what about, to that point, your staff, is your ability to pivot, really, because I mean, like Luke Gedeke, the idea, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but obviously he lined up as a guard his first year, and that was what it was. And now he's this bona fide right tackle that you have, one of the better ones in the league. Just having the ability to pivot. You think a guy might be this, but he ends up being better at this.
Yeah, it happens in some cases. It doesn't always happen that way. In the case of Luke, Todd and I were talking. It was, we needed a left tackle, and we thought we might have one of the best left tackles sitting here playing right tackle. And Luke was a very good right tackle in college, and why not give him a shot? And it worked out. Now doesn't have the prototype length, I guess, arm length and all that, but turns out he can overcome that, so he's pretty good at it. So it worked out in that particular case.
As there is every year, there's some players in the draft that have some really good tape, but they're either injured or dealing with injuries. How do you weigh when you look at a player like that whose tape that you really like, that maybe they might potentially be behind the 8 ball if they can't attend rookie minicamp or training camp, or how does that kind of go into the draft process?
I guess you weigh it in a little bit, but you can only evaluate what he puts out there and what he has out there. So you weigh it a little bit. You don't ideally want to bring in players that have a history of being hurt. So we work that into the algorithm, if you will. So you ideally want a healthy player. So you got to weigh it in a little bit.
Jason, it's the first time in 9 years you don't have Spy with you. How has this process changed? Who's stepped up? Who's taken on more responsibility? And are you worried that he's going to go after the same guys you are?
We're picking so far apart. So no, it's of course I miss him as my friend. We've had the same process. A lot of guys working in the process all these years. Everybody's stepping up a little bit. Made some promotions, and I usually wait until after the draft for those. But got guys like Rob McCartney and Mike Beal and Shane Scannell and Tony Hardy and all the scouts, Byron Kiefer, you name them, Antoine Murray. Everybody's stepping up a little bit more into their role. So, but it's been great. They've been ready for it for a long time. So we're all excited about that.
So you look at your tenure as general manager, you've had a lot of success with edge rushers coming in as veterans, whether it's Robert Ayers or Jason Pierre-Paul, the trade, Shaq. You're hoping Hassan Reddick would be the next one in line there. With the draft, Yaya certainly seems like he's a hit. Maybe the arrow's pointing up for Chris Braswell, but there's been a couple of misses early on. What have you learned about edge rushers and scouting them, and how have you kind of refined that process to get more players like a Yaya Diaby and maybe less like a JTS or a Noah Spence in the past? It's an ongoing process of evolving process, and you're always trying to get better as an as a evaluator. A lot of those cases, I was the one running up the mountain with the flag on some of those guys, and you're not always right. And think I've grown in my profession and my job to know that you can't always be right. But I think as a group we look and see where some of the traits were on some of those guys, and every year we try to tweak it a little bit, but then you tweak it, and then another player has some of the same traits as some of the ones that didn't work out, but work out for somebody else. It kind of all depends now. If you have a lot of good players along the defensive line, everybody tends to play pretty well. So we feel good about where we're at, and like I said, I've talked about it before with Braswell. I'm excited about what he can do this year. I think he's going to come with a little bit of a coming out party in his role, and we're excited about just the whole front.
Jason, I want to ask you about defensive prospects from Georgia. Obviously, the Eagles have had a lot of success with them. You guys got Tyke last year. You're kind of in a unique situation because Todd has seen them in person more than most. McClendon coached with them. I just want to ask you how unique that is and how much of an advantage it is for you to have such strong connections to something that's produced such good NFL talent.
Yeah, no, it's great. They're just so extremely well coached. You can say that about a lot of programs. We've had success with other programs too. So I think it's they also were able to recruit very well and had a lot of talent. So, and then they coach them up well. So anytime that kind of meshes, it feels pretty good. But now we're not the only organization in the Eagles that have a connection with Georgia. A lot of them do. So, but we'll try to take advantage of those relationships the best we can.
Chris, when you think about this team, one of the first things is culture, right? There are some guys on the draft board who have some character concerns, maybe not crazy things, but just like, effort, attitude, type stuff like that. How much do you trust your locker room that you would actually bring one of those? I know Levante, I am that man is the mantra, but someone who might have some of those minor issues that the locker room would set them straight and get them in the right position to go out there and make plays, guys who might be falling a little bit because of those concerns.
We've done such a great job of bringing in the right kind of guys for that reason, because they police themselves. Todd has a great culture and great relationship with everybody. Our coaches do a great job. not all things that you may read about of a player having maybe issues with his attitude or whatever it is are, you can't believe everything you read, but also it's a case-by-case basis with those. These guys are immature. I'll take immature. I mean, they can mature pretty quickly in a locker room like ours and fall in line. Now, there's certain things that we won't tolerate, but a little immaturity is one that we can live with, especially with the culture that we built.
And that kind of goes hand in hand with what you were saying earlier with some of these seniors and stuff have to give up snaps to keep the guys from transferring out, and that can maybe frustrate some guys. Maybe they don't answer it the right way, and that comes off as a red flag.
Sure.
Issue.
Yep.
Okay.
I know in recent years, Bruce Arians has studied the quarterbacks and worked on that with tape and helping you. I know you got your 3 quarterbacks now. Has Bruce been involved helping you still at all now, or?
We talk from time to time. He's liking the golf course quite a bit right now. I just saw him this week, actually. Rondé, went and had dinner with Rondé for his birthday. He's enjoying the golf course, and he's enjoying a stress-free life right now. But I'll talk to him from time to time. I always enjoy bouncing something off of him.
Is he involved at all with your draft process?
He hasn't been here for draft meetings, but I'll call him from time to time, give him a project or two.
Jason, defensive tackles, it's supposed to be pretty deep. I heard Greg Cosell last week say, and obviously he's got contacts, he said there could be as many as 20 defensive tackles drafted in the first 3 rounds. Is it really that deep?
I mean, I guess everything's possible. Potentially, I guess. Anything's possible. You go run on a position, then all of a sudden they can all go pretty quickly. Yeah.
Jason, what do you learn from the top 30 visits? We see you bring a lot of guys where we read, you bring guys in here. What's the process with that? And some guys you've drafted that you didn't have in, and maybe that's intentional, I don't know.
I just enjoy getting to know them. There are some guys that we talked to at the Combine that I wasn't in on the meeting for various reasons. And I just enjoy getting to know them. I just like hearing their story, and I feel like I can get a lot from it. I know that they're coached up on it. There's a few tactics that some of our guys use to get them off their game a little bit, but I just really just like hearing their story. And just how they've overcome some of the things that they have, or some of them haven't had to overcome things, but just how they're wired. So I just enjoy meeting people. So it's just fun for me in general.
Going off of that, what traits do you look for in terms of their character? You're talking about their stories. Obviously, you highlight Chris Godwin, Levante, and what they represent. But what do you look for in terms of character when you're drafting?
Just, I mean, how accountable they've been, what kind of leaders they are, their general character, how they treat everybody around the building, whether it's the interns or the people working in the kitchen and the janitors or whoever it is. We try to get a report from everybody that touched them during the day. I don't know if they realize this. Some of them probably wish they would have known that. It just what kind of, I'd like to hear them talk about their teammates and what players that they went against this year and past years that gave them troubles, and just to hear their confidence and their humility too.
Jason, Josh Grizzard obviously has a lot on his plate right now, being a first-time offensive coordinator. How involved is he in the draft preparations with that title? And I know that you're not probably, this is not going to be an offensive-laden draft probably. That probably diminishes his input. But where does he stand in the draft process now that he's elevated to the role of OC?
Just like any coordinator we've had in the past, we went through draft meetings this week. We get together, myself and a few on my staff get together with all the coaches and meet one-on-one with the coordinator and Todd, obviously, and talk about all the players that we assign them to look at, which is a lot. And they really get into it. It's very helpful, not just for this year's draft, but it can be helpful down the line too, what they thought about these players. The coaches love to try to do I mean, we've been watching them all year and talking to people for over a year on these players, and they have basically a month to do it. But some of the information they get is very valuable, but it can pay dividends in the future, or when these players get released. at some point, or they're available when they're free agents. Some of it's carryover. So they really enjoy doing it, and he's no different. He's got a big passion for it, and I was really, really excited to see him in the meetings in his new role this year of how just detailed he got into it.
Anytime you score 29.5 points a game, people are going to say they're pretty good on offense, right? And we know the injuries and some of the things that happen on defense. The perception is, rightly or wrongly, you need a lot of defensive players, and maybe, is that a good thing in that it doesn't really matter the position, you said you're always going to take the best player, or is it everybody thinks the Bucs need defense, and so that's where they're headed with every pick or early in the draft? Does it matter? No,
it really doesn't. Sometimes people think that you're playing games and you're trying to throw people off the scent, and you're really not. It really truly depends on how it's going to fall. I've got Todd excited about a lot of offensive players, and we have a good offense, but we could make it even better. We do need help on defense, and we'd be fun to see us improve there, and I think we will, without really making any huge changes. I think we're going to be better, but obviously getting some new players in there is going to make it a lot better. So it really truly depends on how it's going to fall.
Jason, this past year in free agency, you didn't have a ton of guys coming off rookie contracts that you had to worry about extending. But a year from now, you're 22 draft picks. You got Gedeke, McCollum, and Otten. I'm sure the draft is the priority right now, but how confident are you, or how optimistic are you that you might be able to get done new deals with those guys before this coming season?
We'll definitely be having discussions. So, and I mean, I guess you just look at our past. We've usually get them done, and you can kind of see the timeline when we usually try to get those done. So, we'll definitely be having discussions, and that was a good class, and we definitely want those players all in our as Buccaneers in the future too.
When you're doing your kind of run through of what could happen, what resources are you using? Are you looking at mock drafts? Are you listening to look at who's bringing in who for 30 visits? Are you kind of looking out of your corner of the eye, okay, they're meeting with them at the combine? How do you kind of develop what you think is going to happen when you go through all those scenarios for pick 19?
All of it. So, but mainly knowing what every team needs, and our staff has done a great job with that. And then just kind of knowing what how they've drafted in the past, their decision makers there, whether it's the coach or the GM, and then, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know what are the really good players in this year's draft. So you kind of can link it all, but you go through all of it. It's all of that's involved in it, and usually works out pretty good. I've been very fortunate.
Make it a little difficult when there's a new GM in place, maybe even a first-time GM where you don't have that history.
Yeah, it does. But that's why this is so fun. It's unpredictable at the end of the day. You can look at all the mocks you want. I look at mocks just as a fan. If I didn't have this job, I'd be looking at mocks anyway. So I enjoy looking at mocks, but I don't put we don't throw all of our chips into that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, guys.